I just want to say that I have to leave the room to go and vote in my Financial Services Committee, but I really appreciate you coming here. This is a very important topic, and I just want to make sure that the voice of small businesses is represented and that we get it right, because it's important, especially now, given the fact of how our economy is doing. We need to get this economy growing again. And with this, it offers an opportunity to create new jobs. So my question, Mr. McNamara, is, in your testimony, you highlighted how NRCA supports measures to promote cool roofs, but expressed concern about ensuring flexibility based on region. How can Congress promote the use of these roofs while maintaining the flexibility the industry seeks?
Yeah. Very simply, this is simply a matter between obviously climates in the U.S. Areas such as my part of the country in Wisconsin, where we have winters which we're looking more for heat absorption from the outside than we are losing, trying to reflect or avoid heat during our cold winters and so forth, and dealing with snow loads and all. And so really it's just a matter of being able to promote those in the areas in the south, whether it's a city like Atlanta or Florida or what have you, and realizing those differences throughout the country.
Good. Mr. Yoder, NCGA has been engaged in developing guidelines for climate change legislation, and I understand your organization has worked with agricultural leaders on creating a framework to reduce emissions. Who are your industry partners, and what is the consensus you have been able to develop?
Well, actually, it's been difficult to get all commodity groups engaged in climate, because as some know, it's controversial of whether it's real or not. But the point, in fact, is it's here. There's enough scientific knowledge that we need to engage in this, and there's going to be some climate legislation. So we have worked very closely with other organizations like the Soybean Association and the Wheat Growers Association and National Farmers Union and Farm Bureau. And while we all have maybe a different perspective, we all are at least engaging and trying to figure out what's best for our industry. So yeah, we got some details to work out, but at least we're all finally talking.
That's important. Mr. Sharp, small firms attempting to develop energy-efficient technologies are confronted with two major challenges. The first is developing the technology, and the second one is moving this product to the market. As you point out, small firms often struggle to cross the chasm. How was your firm able to address this challenge, and do you believe that there are ways to assist entrepreneurs overcome this obstacle?
I think the simple answer would be persistence and money, because it takes time to get through this, particularly with newer technologies that people aren't aware of. So I think, looking at it from a policy standpoint, I think, part of this is helping to create incentives. As I said, I think when people look at these new technologies, the concern is not it's expensive. It's really more on the lines of, because the paybacks typically are quite good for a lot of the technologies that have been proposed. But what happens is that the people in industry look at this and they think, well, okay, it's supposed to be a 3-year payback, but in reality, perhaps it's 6, maybe it's 9. I really don't know. Do I believe what they say? So the ability then is, if there are incentives, whether that's from utilities or from the government, that then creates a situation where that 9-year payback that they think it might be, they can offset it down to maybe more like 3 years. In time, obviously, as people then try the technologies, they realize, gee, it really is a 3-year payback, and at that point the incentives become less important. The economics, fuel it. But I think in that early stage, with newer technologies, and maybe there's whether that's a time frame or something, the ability to have some incentives around that is very important. I mean, for us, it's been just persistence, pushing hard. I mean, it's taken a lot of cash, more than my investors ever expected. But in the end, as I say, if people hear it for the 6th time, suddenly it becomes obvious. So you've got to get through that period in that time, and other assistance from the form of incentives may be a way to help that.
Thank you, Mr. Cabinet. It has been stated that regulations reducing greenhouse gas could adversely impact our nation's manufacturing sector. And while recognizing these concerns, it also seems there is potential for business opportunities with the creation of new energy system and a green grid. Do you believe that the domestic steel industry can play a role in greening our economy?
Absolutely. Not only from the side that, the components of the green grid are very steel intensive, and if you make them with the steel that has the lightest CO2 footprint, i.e. domestic steel, then that's a great contribution to greening of the grid. And then we get the benefit on the other side also is by using, energy that's much more green, that lowers the carbon footprint of our industry and flows all the way down through small businesses, as the gentlemen to my left have made that point many times. So certainly, I think achieving a sound and functioning green grid there's a major role for steel. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. McNamara, there are a number of policy tools to encourage the adoption of energy-efficient practices. What is the most effective way, in your opinion, to accelerate energy-efficient roofing in order to reduce carbon emissions?
Well, the piece of legislation that we have being proposed, the GRETA, the Green Roofing Energy Efficiency Tax Act, I think is a wonderful measure to do that. It's a win for all. It, number one, for building owners, brings down the depreciation term from, like I had mentioned previously, an unrealistic and period of 39 years down to a realistic period of 20 years. Study we had done at the time that we proposed this, done by Ducker Worldwide industrial research firm, found that average roof lives were really 17 and a half years, so a 20-year period would seem to be very reasonable. And then we have the opportunity to marry that along with a increase in energy efficiency and making that a benchmark requirement in order to attain and be able to utilize a 20-year period. And so, as I mentioned, I think it would be a win for all parties.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, the National Farmers Union instituted a carbon credit program in conjunction with the Chicago Climate Exchange. How many of your farmers are involved in this program, and do you think this program can be a model for Congress in cap-and-trade legislation?
We have about 4,000 members that are participating in the Chicago Climate Exchange offset program right now. I do believe that can be a model that should be used. Our view is that the model that is most appropriate there is the marketplace part of that model. One of the things that CCX had to do in order to create this market, to have it function, was they also had to have put in place a scientific panel that would establish the protocols, and then they put another system in place to verify compliance, all those sorts of things. That's really not a role that the market itself should play. Those procedures should be done by USDA.
Why is that?
Because they don't have that expertise. They had to get it. The Chicago, the role that the CCX should play should be a role of handling the money, being the market exchange, if you will, so that there are fair prices, so there's transparency, all those kinds of things. The scientific, there have been questions raised by some about whether they use the right science, all those sorts of things. The way you avoid those questions is you have those decisions made by the scientists that, as we would propose it, they should be at USDA. These are the real experts. They've done lots and lots of research. The research is peer-reviewed. It's accepted widely, not only in this country, but in other countries as well. And so it's kind of a long answer, but I think the model of the CCX is a very good model for trading offsets. It's a good, efficient mechanism, doesn't take a lot of resources to do it. It's very efficient, but it needs to be coupled with something that everyone can have a high degree of confidence in, and that, in our judgment, is the scientists at USDA.
Okay. Thank you.